What would you do if you rode out to buy a horse but found a chained and bruised woman staring back at you from the shadows instead? Clay Vannor rode up from Del Rio under a thin, unforgiving sun. Days in the saddle had bent his shoulders, and the long bones of his horse drew narrow shadows across the dry Texas ground. Clay was 34, weathered from life and land, with eyes that had seen more graves than weddings. Folks called him Clay Vannor, though his full name belonged to a family line long buried and forgotten. He came quiet, the way men do when they have carried too much loss. He reached the Rusk homestead at noon. The dry wind scraped the land bare, and the old barn leaned east like it was tired of standing. The house looked small and worn, with dust pressed into its windows like regret. A thick-bellied man came out to meet him, face red, belt stretched tight across his gut, the look of someone who drank too often and slept too little. "You Clay Vannor?" the man asked. "I am. You're here for the sorrel." "That's right. She's in the barn. Go on and look. I'll fetch the papers." Clay nodded, dismounted, and led his horse by the reins. Something about the yard felt wrong. The chickens walked slow, with no hurry. A mutt barked once but lay down again. No sign of a wife's hand at the wash line. No children's voices. Just enough life to keep the place from falling silent. He pushed open the barn door. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of hay, old iron, and dust. It was darker than it should have been. His eyes adjusted slow until he saw the sorrel mare standing in the far stall. Strong, smart in the eyes, worth the ride he had made. But Clay didn't walk toward her. He saw something else, something huddled close to the wall near a stack of tack and old barrels, a shape that didn't fit. Too small, too still, a human shape. He stepped closer. It was a woman, curled on her side, wrists bound with iron chains fixed to a rusted bolt in the wall. Her hair was tangled. Her skin was marked with bruises in different stages. A cut along her cheek had scabbed over wrong. Her dress was dirty and torn. She lifted her swollen eyes just enough to meet his. She did not speak. Clay knelt beside her. His hand hovered near her wrist, then moved toward her face. "You hurt bad," he said. Still no answer. Behind him, a board creaked. Clay stood slow and turned. The red-faced man stood in the doorway, framed by the bright light behind him. "She don't talk," the man said. "Found her near my land a few weeks ago, half dead. I fed her, gave her water, had to chain her up. She's wild, mean as a snake." Clay stayed silent, his jaw tightened. "She's got the devil in her. Bit my boy Kane through the hand. You got papers on her too." Clay's voice was low. "I'm here to buy a horse, not traffic people." "That ain't what this is." "I saved her." Clay took one long step forward. The man's hand jumped toward the gun on his hip, but it didn't matter. Clay's fist met his jaw before he could finish the motion. One clean hit. The man dropped to the dirt outside, groaning. Clay turned back to the woman. "I'm going to get you loose," he said. She flinched, but did not pull away when he pulled a knife from his belt. The bolt was old, but the chain was stiff with age and dried blood. It took time. Clay worked until the iron finally gave way. When he lifted her, she weighed almost nothing, just bones, shadow, and fear. He carried her out past the groaning man, past the mare who nickered once like she understood, and out into the sharp daylight. He did not look back. Some things were better left behind. Clay set her on his horse and climbed up in front of her. Her arms were weak, barely holding on. He took the mare's reins in his other hand and rode west. She didn't speak, neither did he. The land around them stretched wide and empty. No law out here, no witnesses. But Clay had never been a man who needed a judge to tell him what was right. By nightfall, they found a dry creek bed with thick mesquite. Clay made a small fire, set out a blanket, and handed her water. She sat curled with her knees to her chest, her face hidden behind her hair. Clay cooked beans in a dented tin pot and set a bowl near her feet. He didn't watch. He didn't pressure her. Later he heard her eat. She stayed awake all night. Clay did too. The next morning they rode again. Miles passed beneath the horses' hooves. Clay spoke little, but he made sure she drank water and rested often. By the third day she could sit upright in the saddle. By the fourth, she no longer flinched when he moved near. On the fifth day she finally spoke. "Name's Mara." Her voice sounded dry, like rope dragged across gravel. Clay nodded. He did not ask more. That night she washed her face in a cold stream. The bruises were purple and yellow, fading slow but not gone. She sat near the fire. "Where we going?" she asked. "I got land west of Arroyo Blanca," he said. "A house, a pasture. No one comes out there unless they got reason." She stared at the flames. "Why are you helping me?" Clay looked into the fire. His jaw tightened again. "A man who stays quiet while wrong is done," he said. "Ain't much of a man." Mara didn't answer, but the next morning she saddled the mare herself. When they reached Clay's ranch at dusk, the house stood small but strong under a ridge of pines. Clay showed her the spare room and set a basin of water inside. She walked in slow, like she expected chains to fall from the ceiling at any moment. He didn't ask her to stay. He didn't need to. She slept for 2 days. But healing from wounds like hers was more than sleep. It was the long road ahead, and neither of them knew what waited on it. What happens when a woman learns she is finally safe but her past refuses to stay buried? Mara slept for 2 days in the small room Clay gave her. When she came out on the third morning, her steps were slow and her eyes sharp, like someone who expected danger at every corner. Clay didn't ask questions. He handed her a tin cup of warm coffee and nodded toward the porch. "You can sit," he said. She didn't sit. Not at first. She stood with her back to the wall, watching the open land like someone who knew danger could ride in at any hour. Only after a long time did she lower herself onto the step. Days passed. Mara learned the names of the goats, helped fix a broken fence, and cleaned her wounds with vinegar even though it made her hiss through her teeth. Clay gave her space, but he never let the nights go unguarded. He sat on the porch with his rifle across his lap, eyes steady on the trees. It took time, but she began to trust the quiet. Then, one morning, she was gone. Clay saw her saddle missing, and the sorrel mare too. There was no note, no sound, only the soft tracks leading east. He didn't grab a weapon. He didn't shout. He saddled his horse and followed. He found her near the Rusk place, crouched low in the brush. She knew he was behind her even before he spoke. "I didn't come to go back," she said. "I came to see if he's still alive." "You going to finish it?" Clay asked. She didn't answer right away. "I came to see if he's gone. I need to know." Clay stood beside her. The house looked dead. No smoke, no movement, just silence stretched thin. Mara walked down the slope. Clay followed close. Inside the house, the smell hit them first. Something rotten. Bottles on the floor. Dried blood in dark patches. A boy lay in the corner, no older than 15, his skin pale, a cloth held to his stomach. He looked at Mara with one tired eye. "You came back." She froze. "Where is he?" she asked. "Gone," the boy whispered. "Took the wagon south 2 days ago. Said he'd bring men. Said you'd regret getting loose." The boy coughed, voice shaking. "I don't care if you kill him. I held the chain while he beat you. I ain't innocent." Mara's hand moved toward her belt, fingers shaking. Clay stepped forward, blocking her view. "Come on," he said. "Nothing here worth staying for." She didn't move, not at first, but her hand dropped to her side, and she turned away. Clay guided her out of the house, past the dust, past the memories. They rode back as the sun dropped behind the hills. That evening she sat near the fire, with her hair still wet from washing. The bruises on her face had faded to softer colors. Her voice barely rose above the crackle of the flames. "I'm not afraid of him anymore." Clay looked at her. "I know. But I need him to be afraid of me." Quote. Clay nodded. "Then we start tomorrow." The next morning began before light. Mara rose early, boots half-laced, knife at her hip. Clay didn't coddle her. He handed her a rifle. "You miss your shot," he said. "You better be ready to follow with something sharper." She learned fast. Her hands were steady, her eyes sharp. They practiced on old cans, pine knots, fence posts. Clay taught her how to track fresh prints in dry dirt, how to listen for the click of a hammer, how to move quiet over gravel. Mara rarely spoke about the barn, but when she did, her voice no longer shook. "He thought breaking me meant keeping me," she said one afternoon. "Like if he chained me long enough, I'd forget who I was." Clay spat in the dust. "He won't be thinking much when you're done." Weeks passed. The land shifted toward fall. Mara changed too. She no longer walked like a wounded woman. She walked like someone who had crawled out of darkness and refused to go back. A colder fire lived in her eyes now, steady and sure. One night, a rider came up the trail, a lean man with dust on his boots and a scar across his lip. Clay met him with his rifle ready. "I'm looking for a woman," the rider said. "Short hair, quiet, rode off with a man who looks like you." Clay didn't answer. The rider grinned, but his eyes were wrong. "Name's Jero. My brother's been missing a month. Last seen with a busted jaw." Mara stepped out from the barn. Her hair was pulled back, her face clear. Jero's smile cracked. "You," he whispered. Mara didn't blink. "Tell your brother I'll find him, not the other way around." Jero hesitated, then rode off fast. After he was gone, Clay looked at her. "That was a choice. I made it. You could have killed him. That would have been mercy." Clay didn't argue. He simply nodded. 2 days later, Clay found a trap near the river. Blood soaked into the dirt. Something had taken the bait. "Scouts," Clay said. Mara crouched beside him. "He's testing us." "We won't chase," Clay said. "No," Mara answered. "He'll come to us." From that moment, the ranch turned into a fort. They dug trenches near the gate, set traps in the barn, tied broken glass under the windows. Mara wore a pistol low on her hip now. She walked with a confidence Clay had never seen before. Then, one dawn, smoke curled on the horizon. A wagon, 3 riders, moving slow. "They'll come at dusk," Mara said. "They think they can scare me." "Are they right?" Clay asked. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. That evening, as the sun sank, 3 riders appeared on the ridge. They rode loose, guns hanging low, laughing. Clay stepped out first. "This land's not for sale." The lead rider dismounted, Jero. "We're here for her," he said. Mara stepped forward. "Then come take me." No one moved. Then Jero's hand twitched. A gunshot cracked through the air. But it wasn't Clay. It was Mara. Jero's hat flew off. His men scattered. One fell in the dirt. Another ran for the barn and screamed when a trap snapped closed. Mara walked steady toward the wagon, her pistol raised and sure. Clay covered her, moving slow and calm, like this was something they had trained for all along. Jero crawled behind the wagon, shaking. Mara did not stop walking. "You held the chain," she said. "You smiled while I hurt." He tried to beg, but the words tangled in fear. Mara lifted her pistol. Clay didn't look away. The shot echoed across the land. When it was done, she turned back toward Clay, her face calm, her steps steady. "You done?" he asked. "For now," she said, but the road ahead was long, and there were more names waiting on it. What happens when revenge becomes the only thing keeping someone alive? After Jero fell, the land went quiet again. But it was the kind of quiet that sits heavy, almost warning of what comes next. Mara and Clay buried the bodies in a dry arroyo where no grass grew. Mara worked without stopping, pushing dirt with her hands when the shovel slipped. When they finished, she washed her arms in cold water and sat by the fire without speaking. Clay didn't try to comfort her. He knew she wasn't looking for that. The next morning, Mara stood at the edge of the ridge, her eyes on the long trail stretching south. "They won't stop with him," she said. "No," Clay answered. "Men like that never die alone." She turned toward him. "You ever kill someone slow?" Clay stared into the distance. "Once." Didn't feel better than killing quick. "I'm not looking to feel better," she said. "I'm looking to make them remember." She didn't explain. She didn't need to. Clay saddled 2 horses. They left at first light. Mara wore a new name, Lenora. Clay went by Ward. They traveled under false trails, slept in dry creek beds, and kept their backs to the wind. Mara didn't ask how Clay knew how to track men who hid their sins. She didn't ask why he stayed beside her. The first name on her list was a gambler in Prairie Gulch, a loud man with a heavy gut and a laugh that made women flinch. Mara watched him from a shadowed corner. When he stumbled out drunk at midnight, she followed. Clay stayed back, shotgun resting easy on his shoulder. She stepped in front of the gambler. "You know me?" she asked. He squinted at her. "Don't reckon I do." "I was 13, she said. "You held me down." Fear cracked across the man's face. He reached for his belt. Mara broke his hand with a hammer she'd hidden in her coat. She didn't kill him. She left him screaming in the mud with a note pinned to his coat. Not forgotten. More names followed. A traitor who once paid coin to watch her scream. A drifter who dragged girls into riverbeds. A man who laughed when they cried. Each one found her waiting. She didn't always kill them. Sometimes she left them alive with pain that would follow them for years. Sometimes she didn't. People whispered her name in bunkhouses and taverns. Some called her a ghost. Others called her vengeance with a heartbeat. Clay said nothing. He walked beside her, always steady, always near, the one anchor she still had. Then came the one name she feared most, Jessic. He was living in a mining camp near the border. A cruel man with a new name and old habits. Mara and Clay found him hauling sacks of ore. Mara stepped into the open. Jessic froze. "You," he said, voice cracking. "You thought I died," Mara answered. "You ain't got it in you," he said. "You were just a girl." Quote, she shot him through the knee. He collapsed, screaming. Clay kicked away the axe he tried to reach. Mara dragged him across the cold dirt to a stump he used for chopping wood. Clay looked away. Mara didn't make it quick. When she finished, she washed her hands in the creek, scrubbed until her skin turned raw. Clay handed her a cloth. She didn't take it right away. That night under the open stars, she whispered, "That was the first time I felt something since the barn." Clay didn't ask what she felt. He already knew, but the road west still held more names. Winter came early. Snow covered the high country. Mara changed again. She grew quieter, sharper, like each man she found took a piece of her with him. Clay watched her worry with her knife every night, cleaning it even when it didn't need cleaning. One night he handed her a bottle of rye. She stared at it a long time before handing it back. "I want to remember everything." "You will," Clay said. When spring broke, they headed toward a small valley town called Mercy Ford. A preacher lived there, a man known for soft sermons and gentle smiles. Mara knew the truth behind the robe. She walked into the church during Sunday service. Her boots thudded on the wood floor as every head turned toward her. She stepped up to the pulpit and held up a faded photograph of herself as a child, bound, bruised, terrified. "You remember the barn?" she said. The preacher tried to run, but the townsfolk stopped him. They dragged him outside. Mara didn't shoot him. She handed the pistol to a grieving mother whose daughter had vanished 2 summers before. Clay and Mara rode out before the trial ended. The final name on her list wore a badge. Sheriff Ree Carney. A man who ordered the chains. A man who paid to keep girls silent. A man whose house stood tall, windows bright, sons well-fed. Mara walked to his porch as Clay took the high ground. Carney stepped out with a rifle raised. Mara moved before he did. His shot went wide. Hers did not. She took his leg, dropped him screaming onto the porch. "You paid to bury girls," she said. "I didn't stay buried." He tried to spit something cruel. She holstered her pistol. "I'm done with you," she said. "Let your sons decide what kind of men they'll be." She walked away. Clay followed. They didn't look back. Weeks later, they built a small house near a ridge where the wind hummed low and steady. Mara hung a blue dress by the door. She never wore it. She still carried her pistol, still carved her mark an M inside a broken circle, on old posts when the past pressed too close. Clay worked the land and watched her heal in small pieces. One evening he found her planting sage outside the house. Her hands were steady, her breathing calm. "You think it's over?" Clay asked. Mara looked out across the long, quiet land. "No," she said, "but it's quiet now." And for the first time since he met her in a dark barn, Clay saw something in her eyes that looked like peace. Maybe not forever, but enough for now.